like to say that we're giving people superpowers with AI, right? Our thesis, our hypothesis is not, we're not coming in and like saying we're going to replace human beings. We are here to give you superpowers so that you can do 10x more with AI than you could before.
Hello, founders, investors. Welcome back to Next Round Ready. I'm your host, Chris. Today we have a very special guest, Aniket. I want to make sure I say it right.
You got it right, man.
Aniket. See, I'm pretty decent with the names. I practice them before we go live, just so I can make sure it sounds good. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you so much. So excited to be here.
So let's start off with your origin story, right? Like, what experience led you to building your company? Like, how did you get here? What made you want to be a founder?
Yeah, no, great question. So this actually started a few years ago. This was when I was at Czech as the product leader, and I was building out my product team. I remember this moment very clearly. I put up a job on LinkedIn for a senior product manager. It was towards the end of the day. I made the post and I went home, came back to the office around lunchtime. I figured, okay, let me check and see what's happening. Maybe we have like a handful of applicants. If you would believe it, we had well over 700 applications. Yeah. So at that point, I'm like, my brain is having a bit of a seg fault going, where do I even begin? How like, I want to be fair to the people who've applied, right? They've taken time, they've made an application. So I want to be fair, which means I'm not just going to close the job and say, all right, whatever, right? But at the same time, like going through 700 applications, like how's that going to happen? And so that really got me down this path of how are people doing it? Because when I worked at Microsoft, things were different. At a large company, you have a large recruiting team. You can just kind of like fling it over and like people will come and help you out. And I didn't really appreciate how hard it was to be a sourcer, a recruiter. And when I started doing that for a startup, that's when it became real. And to make it worse with AI, it's gone to like, it's on steroids now. There's so much of fraud on both sides. There are fraud applications coming in and there are fraud jobs that don't exist. Yeah. And so there's a real need in the market. So that's kind of like where I was like, okay, we need to solve this problem. I felt this problem. My co-founders felt this problem, and we're both like very passionate about it. And I really, really wanted to go in and solve this problem first for myself. And when I went in and I started doing discovery and I met people, they're like, hey, we have that problem. If you're building that, I'll use it. And so I was like, well, did I just get my first customer? Like, okay, all right, I guess we're building this.
Oh, that's beautiful. You could just walk into your first customer. That's why I think discovery is so important, because that kind of helps you confirm if the problem is real, like if it's a real issue people have. And then, like you said, you get the first customers. I think that's the way a lot of younger, smaller startups can really start things out. For you, was that impact like instant? How long did that process take for you to kind of get that proof that the problem you were solving was a real problem?
Yeah. So personally, I've had that problem, right? And I know people have had that problem, but discovery, I needed to do that in a bit of a structured way. So I spent, I want to say about a month talking to everyone from like a sourcer, a recruiter, they were a recruiting director, or a chief HR officer, hiring manager, like somebody who's in director of engineering, or a CTO, founder, etc. And there was definitely a common thread that was going through all of these conversations. And after, I don't know, like a couple hundred, I felt like I had enough signal and evidence that there was a real problem to be solved here. And in addition to that, there was willingness to pay, because there could be a problem and people could say, yeah, that is a problem. I just don't have the budget for it. That's when you start to run into issues. And here people were like, all right, I'll pay you. And at the time, I didn't even know how much to charge because I hadn't even thought that far ahead. So I literally, I'll share this with you and people who are going to listen to this. I just blurted out, all right, I'll charge you $100. And the person said, all right, deal. I was like, okay, maybe I'm charging less.
That no brainer has to be a good feeling when you're starting out. And at this point, did you have like MVP ready, or was it just the concept? Like, what did you actually go to show them when you were sitting down in your demos or your discovery sessions?
The fun part is I've read this before until it happened. I did not have an MVP. I did not even have a website that said Skillsheet. I had not even picked the name Skillsheet. So this was me going and having conversations as part of discovery. June 30th is when we actually were like, all right, we're doing this. And then we made a landing page. And so, yeah, this was before we had an MVP. There was no demo to give people. And then, of course, like we quickly started turning around and building stuff and getting things out of the door.
Love that, man. That's some good progress. So, how does a product actually work? I think this is an important question to really get an understanding from a user's perspective on how it could benefit me if I'm a potential user.
Yeah. So let's talk about the recruiting side of things. Let's say you're somebody who's in the mid market. You're having a couple of challenges typically, right? One is either you're basically drowning in resumes and the signal to noise ratio, which is you're looking for where are the good matches out of this sea of applications that I'm looking at, and how can I identify those, right? And that takes a bunch of time and energy. Or then you decide, you know what? I'm just good. This is so much trouble. Let me just go find the people. Like, let me go meet people where they are. And we help with that in a few different ways. We do three things. One, we have 800 to 850 million profiles. These are candidates with their experience, where they've worked at, their education, and contact information. This is something that you can go search and say, hey, I'm looking for, let's see, a senior UX designer who's located in the greater Seattle area, who has experience working with Figma and has worked at company A, B, and C, because maybe your prior great hires came from those companies. So you're describing this in simple English as if you would to a friend or a colleague. And we help you find those candidates and rank them and say, all right, these 25 are like really close match. Optionally, you can either reach out to them directly or we can actually help you reach out and track that progress. So you sent out like 25 messages as an email, let's say, and 20 of them got back and said, hey, they're interested. And then 15 of them said, all right, I've already set up time on your calendar, right? So that takes away so much time and energy from a recruiting perspective. And I like to say that we're giving people superpowers with AI, right? Our thesis, our hypothesis is not, we're not coming in and like saying we're going to replace human beings. We are here to give you superpowers so that you can do 10x more with AI than you could before, right? And then on the other side, we help with fraud elimination and identity verification. There's plenty of fake applications coming in, fraudulent applications coming in, either somebody who's taking somebody else's identity, resume, even LinkedIn profiles, and
Wow.
applying, and then either somewhere towards the end of that process, they realize like, hey, this isn't the person that we think they are. And in a bunch of cases, and I've talked to HR leaders who've discovered that this isn't the person we thought this person was after they started working. So after a few paychecks were already in the bank, and oh man, so it becomes a security compliance nightmare, right?
Yeah.
And so what we do is we say, hey, instead of running your background check towards the end, we will help you do that right up front. every single applicant. We can do this at scale, right? So even when you pick up the phone, you know that you're talking to a real person and the person is who they say they are. So don't even spend the whatever 5 hours, 10 hours that you did on somebody that was trying to fake their way in. Here's another crazy statistic, and this was on Fortune just a couple weeks ago. The current estimation of what has been uncovered by North Korean agents pretending to be in America, getting a job in tech, and collecting that salary and sending that back is $1 billion in 2025. Isn't that
Insane.
crazy?
It's terrifying because you'll run into a lot of applicants here from our universities, from our different, just locally, right? They worked at other companies and they're trying to get a new job, and they're like, the job market's terrible because you're also competing with the entire world now because of stuff like that. Like that's a big pain point for a lot of companies. So is that like one of the aha moment for the users? Like, what's one thing your users have seen so far where they're like, "Oh my god, this is incredible"?
Yeah, so that there are two things that end up being that way, right? Like the one is, okay, so if I use you, then I don't have to worry about this problem happening to us. Like exactly. So whether you might be in like a regular, highly regulated industry, or you're just like, hey man, like we are hiring people where we are going wherever the talent is, right? We are hiring remote, but that does leave us open to these kind of issues. We want to plug that hole. We want to keep our advantage. And this makes so much sense. And it costs like really a fraction compared to today. If you go run a full background check, it's at minimum $30, but more likely it's like 100 something dollars per candidate. And that's not a problem because by that time an offer has gone out. We
Yeah.
do this for very, very little. And so if you have 200 applications, 200 applicants, we'll do this for all 200. So that's very lucrative to people. And then there are a third category, which is we're just in a mass hiring situation right now, let's just say. So it could be like we are hiring a machinist, right? We're hiring somebody who is like we just need a lot of illustrators right now because we're doing that kind of work. We do video, AI-led video skill assessments. And so this is, you can have 50 people going on a call like this, and AI is having a real-time conversation with them, asking them about like, all right, tell me about your background. Hey, what was the last thing you did? Those kind of questions. And we capture that and share that with the recruiter, which helps them make better decisions. And one of the hiring managers, he said, hey, Aniket, this is great. I like this because it's not that I don't want to go on a call and talk to these candidates. I love doing that. But when I get on the call, I know where I want to dig in because all of the like scratching the surface type of question, like that's already done. And I know that this person is good in this area and I'm going to deep dive, right? So it's a really productive conversation.
I love that. So, what's one measurable result that you're most proud of so far?
So hard to pick. I will always go be coming from a product background, even between like the business result with an ARR, instead of going with that, I'm going to go one where our customer is super happy to have closed open recs in a much shorter period of time. So the time to go from, okay, I've put in a job to, all right, interviews are happening, can be of the order of weeks. We've brought it down to a order of like a couple of days, 2 to 3 days. And the best quote was a recruiter said, sent a message with, I love this, with like about 10 exclamation marks. And that was like so satisfying to read and say, I love this with a bunch of exclamation marks. Like I was able to find exactly the people that I was looking for. I was able to reach out and I'm having conversations with them already in a period of like 24 hours.
That is really good. So, how much are you raising right now? And with that raise, what are you hoping to unlock?
Yeah, great question. So here's the fun part. The way that we happened into customers, we also sort of happened into current investment. Our customer um, is so impressed with what we're doing, is putting in their own money and coming in as an investor, right? And as a founder, like I can't think of any other stronger signal early on where you got a customer and that customer is like, I'm going to buy your stuff, and by the way, I'm also going to invest in you. So that's like confidence in the product as well as our ability to execute. So honestly, we've just taken opportunistic investment when it has come in. And we're talking to a few people, but again, it's been opportunistic investment. There's a couple more that have come in after this customer. But to answer the other part of your question, what we will do with the funds that we have is two sort of buckets. One on the product side, we have a lot of integrations that we need to build, right? Today, our application is standalone, but that's soon going to change we'll integrate with your existing system. So when a recruiter wakes up and they come in and they log on, their day is sort of set up already, right?
Right.
And our agent will help you do that. And then on the other side, there's some go-to-market activity, reaching out and signing up with additional mid-market, which is the area that we're focusing on, mid-market customers, especially who are either a managed service provider or a recruiting agency. Those we tend to do really well right now, and that's honestly our focus. And we'll use that for a bit for events. In fact, speaking of which, actually a plug, if I can, we're hosting an event on November the 24th for, if you are in HR, if you are in recruiting, if you are in talent acquisition, and you feel passionate about, hey, we could do talent and recruiting a little bit differently. We're hosting a networking and a bit of a small group workshop
That.
for you. We can share a link. I don't know if that's possible, but if not,
Yeah.
like reach out. Yeah, would
Yeah.
love that. Yeah. So we'll do the plan is to use that to kind of build community in at least starting with our greater Seattle area.
It's great. Guys, I'm in Seattle as well. It's a ton of events out here. Seattle, Bellevue. It's nonstop, honestly. Like it's just nonstop events here. I love that aspect. So if everything works out, let's go bigger picture here, best case scenario. What does your product change in like 5 years? Best case scenario.
Best case scenario in 5 years, what I started to think about as like a vision is I want to build the talent graph for essentially the world. What that means is you go in and say, I want to hire, I'm having this problem and I need somebody who has this specific type of a domain expertise, has worked in a fintech that was a startup that was acquired by somebody in this kind of domain, and this person comes from like this background, has these skills, is great explaining these kind of topics in simple to understand language, and we could actually find you a bunch of people that match that criteria. So not just like keyword matching, actually understanding what it is that people are very good at that isn't quantified on a resume. But when you go and say, hey, man, I'm looking for like somebody that I could work with as like a social media manager or something like that, and this is what I want this person to be able to do. But a bunch of that never really translates into a job description. But you have that and you are like looking for that, right? And so in 5 years, that's the thing, like that's kind of the graph that I want to build.
Very different. So I want to talk a little bit about leadership because after interviewing so many VCs and angel investors, Leadership is like top five in terms of what's important to them. So I always like to ask founders, what's a recent decision that really tested you and your leadership abilities?
That is a really good question. I think to be honest, and this will help aspiring founders, current founders. I think early on as a founder, the you're on a bit of a roller coaster, right? There's a day when like everything is going your way. That one person that you just casually reached out to responded and said, "Hey, let's grab coffee like today." And then the thing that you were trying to solve is solved, right? And then there are days when it just doesn't feel like your day, and it's like you feel like, oh my God, could anything go any worse today?
True
Like,
roller coaster.
yeah, like, oh, I was hoping this person would come in and they would be like a sponsor at our event. And then at the last second, and it didn't kind of happen. And by the way, this kind of stuff, this like actual story, and like my car got towed because I parked in some place, and then I got this call. And so the real, I think, of leadership comes in to finding ways when you're at the bottom. Like we all can feel good when things are at the top, right? But when you are there on the bottom, to keep an eye on the big picture and bring back focus and say, hey, here are all of the things that are happening. Because the emotional part of the brain will take over and be like, oh my God, things are falling apart, right? But then when you look back and take a moment and think, okay, so we've done all of this stuff. We have customers. We have all of this stuff going for us. We have a good trajectory. We're shipping good stuff. People are using it. We have good quotes and testimonials that we're getting from people. I think to me, that moment, literally as of last Friday, really brought in. And because as a founder, you also have to, like, it's a small team and you have to keep that perspective up and open for the rest of your team to see and
Yes.
follow as well. Because it's not just enough in your mind to go, okay, I can do this. It's like, guys, all of us can do this. We've done this. We are here because we not only believe in this, but we are fully capable. Here are all of the signals so far. And let's go and make this happen. Today is a not so great day. Maybe there were not so great outcomes, but tomorrow is again a fresh day. Which also, by the way, reminds me of this. I don't remember the name of the book, but it's about having, don't try to force yourself to have a positive mindset when it's hard. Just try to have like a neutral mindset, right?
Oh, I've
So,
heard that one before. That's familiar. I forget who said it, but I agree because I think if you try to flip too fast from the negative or bad to the good, it just throws you off.
yeah.
It's just unnerving because it's too fast. It's like going from hot to cold too fast. But if you just go right in the middle, then you can kind of relax more. It's more calming. So I've heard that. I don't know where it is. I'm gonna have to look it up.
Yeah, I don't either. Yeah, you got to tell me when you do, but it resonates more with me because I find that it's easier to have a neutral mindset than it is to have a like immediately flip and like it's all like unicorn and rainbows.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So I got a couple more questions for you. What is something that investors often misunderstand about your space, about the area that you're in? Because I think a lot of times investors don't really know anything about the space, and they're coming to some founders just so they can learn more about it. And they have some misconceptions, some biases before the conversation even begins. Is that something that you've experienced so far?
Yes. There, about this space, there are a couple of things I would say. One, there there are plenty of tools that are coming in and saying, hey, we can help you sort and rank the incoming applications. And today with AI, that's that's easy enough to do by, you can literally like send a bunch of resumes to OpenAI and say, all right, summarize these and rank these, and you can build an app that does that. And so you tend to hear a lot of, oh, there are so many founders that are building stuff like that, right? Or there are so many
Yeah.
apps that are doing that. This is a crowded space. If you look at it from that perspective, yes, it is a crowded space. But when you actually start to dig in, you realize the core problems that recruiters are having, that HR execs are having, are still out there. Recruiting agencies, providers, talent teams are still using spreadsheets, and they're still using LinkedIn search, which, by the way, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but that they're manually going and searching and doing these things one-on-one. So your hypothesis that this is a crowded space and the reality, that isn't matching, right? And there is plenty of opportunity here. And when you also think about it from our worldview, which is, let us help and make this so much better for you by doing all of the groundwork, doing all of the legwork of, let us go. Would you believe it? Like, recruiters are still sending emails saying, hey, send me your availability over the next 2 weeks. Why are we doing that in
It's
2025?
ridiculous. It makes
Right?
no sense. Email tag at this point makes no. You can schedule emails in like seconds, and it's. I love that feature personally.
Yeah, right. So I mean, there are still these problems, and there's a reason those problems are still there. It's because the current solutions aren't cutting it, right? When you think about the other angle, the fraud angle, I don't think many investors have thought about that, but there's data, right? And it's starting to now come into the mainstream. Like, I feel like all of this stuff is just kind of simmering below, and it's going to boil over at some point, right?
Yeah.
Don't wait for it to get to that point. And if you're an investor, do you want to like go pay a lot of money to invest for smaller equity later on, or do you want to invest in a company for a lot less money, potentially more equity, right? Early on, when you know that that problem is going to boil over
Mm.
very soon, right? So I think those two things, I don't think a lot of investors who are not in the space realize, and sometimes investors have gotten burned by investing in like HR tech, for instance, and so they're like, we just don't touch HR tech. We all have our life experiences, and there's no right or wrong answer there.
Yeah. So this is a really interesting platform. I'm excited to see what happens for you next. You mentioned the workshops and everything that you're doing earlier. I'll make sure I put a link to that in the show notes in the description.
So much.
Any advice for the founders, right? If you're a founder out there listening, I love to ask my founders who come on the show just for one piece of insight they can share with other founders who might want to reach that next level and grow their startup.
Yeah. So aspiring founders, this is what I would say. The difference today in what you need to do in actually to get into a serious position as a company or as a founder, it's not just the product. It's actually getting a hold on your distribution. Okay, let's assume for a fraction of a second, right? I know you know this, right? Like,
Yes.
whatever you're planning on building, let's assume that that existed. Let's assume you've talked to like 15 people or 500 people, whatever number makes sense, and you know this is a problem. All right, great. How are these people going to learn about you, and how are you going to get your product to them? There's a very famous saying, I don't know who came up with this, so my apologies, where it goes like, first time founders focus on product, second time founders focus on distribution. Like, just think about the distribution up front. And a lot of times you can work your way back from that. Like, if you're doing something that's B2C, you have a great following on Instagram already, like maybe that's a good way. And then you can start to work your way back and start to build out your product that way. If you're doing great on LinkedIn, maybe that's one way. Or maybe you need to go and work with a co-founder where you go, I know how to go do A, B, and C, and I need somebody who is like the
Yes.
channel, right? So yeah, advice I'd give is like pay really close attention to your distribution way early on before you start to even build your product.
I love that breakdown, man. Aniket, thank you so much for being here. You were an incredible guest. I'm excited to see what's next for you, man. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. This was a really great conversation. I enjoyed it and looking forward to having more great conversations with you.